Becca, a big warm welcome to Stories of Hope and Science. It is such an honor to have you here with us, and thank you for being open to sharing a little about your own experience with symptoms as well as your professional insights on neuroplastic science. It's just really an honor to have you here, so thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone for everything you've done with Living Proof. It's so important. And yeah, I'm happy to share my experience.
Awesome. So Becca is very well known within the global mind body community, but for anybody who doesn't know her so well, I just wanted to give a little introduction. So Becca is a doctor of family medicine, and she spent 20 years within the conventional medical system working in primary care, where she saw thousands of patients with chronic medically unexplained symptoms. She went on to train extensively in the neuroscience behind these symptoms, and she became long COVID clinic lead at Kaiser Permanente. She then went on to found Resilience Healthcare, where she supports patients with chronic neuroplastic symptoms to reduce and resolve them. She's also board chair of the ATNS, the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms. I managed to say that. And as Claire was saying, she's co-host of a fantastic podcast with Dr. Howard Schubiner, The Science Behind the Symptoms. We love this podcast. We recommend it to everyone. So we can't wait to dive into your story, hear about your symptoms and the science that explains them. So let's go ahead and get started. So as I was saying in the introduction, before you became an expert in neuroplastic symptoms, you were a primary care doctor, and every day you saw patients with chronic, puzzling symptoms that were hard to understand and difficult to treat. So at that point in your career, what was your understanding of these symptoms, of the origins of these symptoms that you were seeing every day in your patients?
Well, as a primary care doctor or in Europe, a GP, I worked in the big health system of Kaiser Permanente. It's very high volume, and it's a little bit close to the NHS, is that it's a closed health system. And so within our system, we have all our own specialists. Any particular patient just sees any doctor within our closed system. And then with our electronic medical record, every patient that I saw, I just very clearly could see everything that they've tried, their problem list, really everything that was going on for them. And so probably 10 years into my career, I'd had enough experience at that point. I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of patients. I've seen a pattern that I just didn't understand what we were missing as doctors, that we couldn't help so many people. And seeing a pattern of a lot of different kinds of symptoms, chronic pain, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, chronic fatigue, all of these different body-based diagnoses, most of them that did not have an abnormal test to diagnose them, like migraines, for instance, or irritable bowel syndrome. But also seeing, it was like a triad of seeing also a lot of mental health diagnoses, anxiety, depression, ADHD, OCD. But it was very clear that it wasn't that those mental health diagnoses were the cause of the symptoms, nor were the symptoms the cause of the mental health diagnoses exactly. They more traveled together more often. And then the end of the triad, or the third part of the triad, was that people more often had a history of trauma or stress, not always, but more often. And then often they were otherwise relatively healthy people. Like they weren't elderly people with diabetes and cancer, but young, middle-aged, otherwise healthy people without other medical problems. And so just seeing this pattern over and over and over again. And as a GP, our job is to coordinate everyone's care throughout their whole organ systems. We also see everything that does not work. When someone goes to see a specialist or they go to see an alternative medicine provider or whatever it is, when that doesn't work, they often actually don't tell the person that they're seeing because of human nature. Sometimes they do, not always. But they come and they tell us because this is our job. And so we're really in a unique position to understand what's working and actually what's not working in a different way, frankly, than the specialists can do. And we're also in a unique position to put these pieces together. So I might see someone that has chronic back pain. And maybe they have something where the chronic back pain gets better. But then 6 months later, now they come in and now they have irritable bowel syndrome. And so, all right, okay. And then maybe 6 months later, that gets better. And then now they come back a year later and now they have another organ system that's affected. And so again, seeing this pattern over and over, it's very, very clear from the primary care standpoint that this is not happening because of physiologic damage in the body. So what I used to say is, oh, well, this is stress, this is anxiety. And I used to talk to my patients about it like that in as, loving, understanding, kind way as I could. But it wasn't right. That wasn't quite right. Or maybe some patients would go to mental health, but really they would never get better from these sort of body-based symptoms, or trying medicines, going to the chronic pain clinic. And the chronic pain clinic where I was at Kaiser uses the biopsychosocial approach with cognitive behavioral therapy, but I never had patients really appreciably get better or have their symptoms completely resolve. So again, it just became this curiosity for me. I just didn't understand what we were missing. And I think very sadly, probably many of you have experienced that when there's something that doctors don't understand and it doesn't make sense physiologically, unfortunately, often it's put on the patient, or the patient is blamed, or they're not believed, or all of these really terrible things. And again, I think it's sort of human nature and sort of where we are and how the system is. But I really thought about it that, this is our job. People are coming to us and we're supposed to be the ones that are helping them figure this out. It's not on them. You wouldn't blame someone that has cancer that they don't know how to get better. And so I just felt like there's, again, these missing pieces, and it became a big curiosity for me to try and find other answers. And so I literally did an internet search to start out, and it was back when fibromyalgia was a diagnosis that was very common. It's still a diagnosis now, but it's actually a little bit less common of a diagnosis than it used to be. And the first place that I ended up was Harvard has a Mind Body Institute. And I went and I did some training there, and they have done decades and decades and decades of research of looking at when our nervous system is stuck in the sympathetic mode, what's happening in our body. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so I brought this back to my patients and I said, hey, look, you're not I understand now this is a nervous system issue. And it's not, you're not making it up, like these symptoms are real, this is a nervous system issue, all this stuff. And I said, oh, great, well, what do I do about it? And what they teach is, all things that are helpful tools, but I said it's mindfulness-based stress reduction, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, getting exercise, eating healthy, sleeping, socially connecting to calm your nervous system. And they said to me, okay, I'm doing all of that and I'm still suffering. So again, I thought, well, what am I going to tell people at this point? They're doing all these things. This is what I got for you. And so again, I just thought, all right, well, back to the drawing board. There are still missing pieces it's still not enough. So I searched for years and years. And then I went to medical school in Michigan, where Dr. Schubiner is from. And one of my good friends from medical school said to me, I send my patients to Dr. Schubiner with chronic pain and he fixes them. They come back to me and their pain is gone. And it was this moment of cognitive dissonance where there was two, not only beliefs, but my lived experience that that's not possible. Well, you can't cure chronic pain, but the other belief is that this is my best friend and she doesn't lie and she's talking about her own lived experience. And so I had these two opposing beliefs, and I chose to let go of the belief that chronic pain is not resolvable and listen to my friend. And then I looked up Dr. Schubiner and learned how he does it and learned, everything I could about it, and really, really, really actually realized that this had been going on for decades. There's tens of thousands of people around the world that have been helped by this, and just really dove into it completely.
Wow. Okay. So you go on to train extensively in the neuroscience behind chronic symptoms. And I'd just love to know, how did this reframe your understanding of chronic symptoms and how we can respond to them in a way that supports them to reduce and as you were saying, and in some cases, completely resolve?
Yeah. So this was when I was still working at Kaiser Permanente, and I had just gotten a little bit of time, half a day a week, in the integrative clinic. So I was able to explore this more with patients. And right, so when I first learned about this, I said, okay, all right, I will believe this. This is my best friend telling me this. There's this very grounded, research-oriented Dr. Schubiner saying this, and lots of people around the world. Now, how can this possibly be? How can he do this? And so, really, it was learning the different steps of it. And the first step is the neuroscience, understanding that 100% of symptoms are made in our brain by neural circuits. So, all sensations that we're feeling in our body, regardless of why we're feeling that experience is all happening because of constructed neural circuits in our brain. And so, pain, if we break our hand, we're experiencing pain not because of the nerves out in our body, which is actually what I used to think as a doctor, but because of the neural circuit made as a protective warning signal mapped to that part of our body in order to communicate with our conscious brain that there's danger, that we need to respond to it. And whatever the sensation is, fatigue, if we're sick with a pneumonia or a virus, or if we're anemic or something going on in our body, the sensation of fatigue is happening in our brain by neural circuits in order to warn us. Same with nausea or dizziness, or, all of the sensations are all happening as neural circuits for protection. So then understanding that was sort of the next step. And I said, okay, all right, I get that. Well, now what do you do? Now, how do you turn that off? And what's different about that and say the biopsychosocial approach or using meditation or breathing or calming the nervous system or cognitive behavioral therapy, what is the radical difference of why Dr. Schubiner or other people can actually dial that down and turn it off? And so it's understanding why our brain is trying to protect us and what it's trying to protect us from. And how I think about it is this is the danger part of our unconscious brain that is both taking the information from the world and up from our body and then deciding, what does that information mean? Does it mean danger or does it mean we're safe? And when the unconscious survival danger part of our brain decides that this information means that we're in danger, it then is going to create a warning signal in order to communicate with our conscious brain. And that warning signal can be lots of different things. It can be physical symptoms in our body: pain, fatigue, dizziness, nausea. It can be mental health symptoms: anxiety, depression. So really, this was a huge turning point for me, is to actually think about anxiety and depression from a whole different lens, that those are other warning signals, like pain is a warning signal, and our brain is creating that warning signal because it's perceiving danger. But it also can create warning signals in worry thoughts or behaviors, compulsions, avoidance. And so all of these things are all downstream warning signals that are warning signals that our brain is making because it's perceiving danger. So now how do we turn those warning signals off? So what happens is these warning signals get stuck on loop. They become, the more that we practice this warning signal unintentionally, unconsciously, automatically, not that we're consciously wanting this or deciding to do this, but the warning signal, the neural circuit then becomes strong. and bold and automatic and reactive. And so now, how do we turn that warning signal off? So we turn it off by understanding what it's trying to protect us from, that it doesn't need to protect us, that we're not actually in danger, and understanding what that is, and then speaking the language of the unconscious brain. So just cognitively, just with our thoughts, isn't enough, because that's not the language of our unconscious brain. It's like thinking about make your heart rate go faster right now. Or conversely, make it go slower. You can't do it, right? Because that's not what our cognitive brain has a connection with our body with. But if we go on stage and we have stage fright, our heart will go faster, right? And so that's not any physical damage, but it's a biochemical change in our body that's happening because our unconscious brain is perceiving fear. We can't just automatically make our heart rate go down when we go on stage because we want it to, but we do have agency and we do have influence to change that over time. If Meryl Streep, the actress, gets on stage, is her heart going to race the same that mine's going to race? No, because over time she was able to teach her unconscious brain that she wasn't in danger when she's in front of a big crowd. So it's thinking about these different pieces and really understanding it. So from all of what I learned diving into this is understanding the way that I've found it helpful to look at it with my patients is understanding what does our unconscious brain survival mode care about? And I would say throughout time, millions of years, what it cares about is two things. It cares about physical damage in the body. If our hand is broken, we need the warning signal in order to protect us. And it cares about connection to other people. It's our tribe that has kept us safe. We need other people to keep us safe. We don't have poison or fangs. We need people to keep us safe. So what our survival brain cares about is connection to other people. So what did our brain learn as a child of what brought us connection to other people? So what did we learn as a child of how did we get our parents to take care of us so we don't die? Because as a child, we actually would have died if we didn't have adults taking care of us. We learned that we need to get them to love us in order to get them to take care of us so we don't die, because it's a lot of work. And so what did we learn about love? How do we get love from the adults around us? Did we learn in our body, not cognitively, did we learn in our unconscious brain and therefore our felt experience in our body that I'm unconditionally lovable and worthy just for who I am? Or did I learn that I need to prove my sense of self-worth or my lovability? And generally, this is not intentional, but did my unconscious brain learn that I had to achieve, or I had to be a good girl, or I had to get good grades, or that I had to put my own needs on the back burner and take care of others? And for whatever reason, if the adults in our life were egregiously mean to us, then our brain would learn that. If the adults in our life were kind and nice and loving, but had their own health issues or anxiety or stress or financial worries or whatever it is, again, it's what did our nervous system, what did our brain learn to feel from the adults in our world, in our life? So as I look at it, it how I distill it down is that there's four categories I find very helpful of what our unconscious brain is fearing to make these neuroplastic signals that we don't need, right? Our body is not damaged. We don't actually need that signal. We're not actually in a physical threat of harm. And those four things are our brain fearing that there is structural damage in the body, so being stuck in that fear symptom loop. But the other three are emotional. It's repressed emotions, those personality traits of needing to be high achieving, producing, being a people pleaser, needing control, being perfect, all of which I have all of them. So those personality traits were learned traits to keep us safe. And then the fourth one is having, if our brain learned a false negative core belief that I'm not unconditionally lovable and worthy just for who I am, then my brain fears that I'm going to get kicked out of the tribe. That if I mess up, if I make a mistake, if I don't prove to myself in the world that I am actually lovable and worthy, then the people in my life are not going to protect me. And that feels unsafe. If I'm
Mm,
internally hard on myself, that feels unsafe from my unconscious brain's perspective. And again, this is our unconscious brain. This is not the logical, rational brain. So it's really bringing those pieces together. And all of this is happening away from our conscious awareness. We are consciously not aware of this. So
mm,
it's really understanding how to put the pieces together of understanding what our brain learned and with a symptom in our body. So then it's learning, how do I interpret this symptom in my body? And now how do I understand what it means? And when I can
mm,
understand what it means, then I can show my unconscious brain that I'm not actually in danger, because we have one danger detection system, and that was designed for a physical threat of harm, a predator jumping on us and eating us. And so when our brain is perceiving danger, then our heart rate goes. We have all these biochemical changes in our body, but we don't need those for our psychological dangers. So when we go on stage and we have stage fright, we do not need our nervous system to be in the sympathetic mode, because our unconscious brain is fearing that we're going to embarrass ourselves, and then people will shun us and make fun of us. And so it's just not needed to have this physiologic response in our body.
mm. So I have two questions, Becca, that came to mind as you were speaking then. One is around how, as a doctor, you help people to understand that their symptoms are neuroplastic. Because we know as recoverees, when you've spent years in the conventional medical model with these very physical, very debilitating symptoms and seeing them through a certain lens, it's really difficult to change that lens, to see them through the science of neuroplasticity, through the nervous system, to understand them in such a difficult way. And I'm just wondering if what tools and techniques you might use to help people really evaluate their symptoms and see those links with the nervous system. And then also, I wanted to ask you, when you were talking about the deeper inner work, about shifting those core beliefs, looking at our ways of being in the world and how they might trigger the nervous system, obviously, ways of being that develop for very good reasons. And I just love to know, how do you help people with that deeper inner, sort of more emotional work? So sorry,
Yeah.
two questions to come at you at once, but that was what was arising as I was listening to you.
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of the first part of how to explain it to patients, again, I think about it kind of three ways. Number one is understanding the neuroscience. And then, well, this is the treatment really, but understanding the neuroscience. And then there's the nervous system calming tools, kind of breathing, meditation, social connection, whatever that is. Can dial down the fear a little bit, but then it's the deeper neural circuit training. And that's where the secret sauce is, I would say, in the emotional work. But so kind of starting with the explaining the neuroscience, again, I explain it like that. And then I think what's really important is to really explore for the person putting all the pieces together. So I really hear their whole story of the symptoms that they've been having. And then I start to connect, and then I talk to them about what was happening for you in your life when the symptoms started. And then also exploring, what was your childhood like? What kind of things did your brain learn? What kind of personality traits did your brain learn? And then we really together explore how these different pieces can make sense together. We also really explore the pattern of the symptoms. Where is there an inconsistency where It doesn't follow that it's structural or physiologic. Where is that inconsistency that they've experienced themselves? And then also it's feeling it in your own body. So having people come into closing their eyes, noticing the sensations in their body, and really exploring together how sensations might shift or move a little bit as we explore them together, as they're paying attention to the sensations in their body. They don't always shift and move exactly, but sometimes they do. And so again, it's really personalizing this. And so it's looking at the pattern and what I mean by inconsistencies is inconsistent to being able to explain this in a way that makes sense through the biomedical structural model. So again, really bringing that in for that person. Because the thing that is so hard about this is that what we feel is what we believe. I want you to sit with that for a minute. What we feel is what we believe. We actually don't believe what we think so much, right? So that, think about even a time where you have anxiety or there's tension or, something going on of how you feel or maybe how someone treated you and you feel like they were really mean to you or they didn't like you. And then maybe later they say, what are you talking about? I like you just fine. But what we felt was a different experience than what our logical brain thinks because they are disconnected and what our body feels comes from our unconscious brain, which is not the rational thinking part of our brain, which is why we struggle so much living on this planet. So what we're trying to do is reconcile the two. So we start with our cognition and our logical thinking of looking through the pattern and then understanding that again, what we're feeling in our body is generated from our unconscious, irrational part of our brain. And so it's helping someone to put those pieces together. And then as we start working together, gathering evidence for them.
So just really personalizing for that individual, helping them to really connect the dots between their symptoms and how that doesn't fully match with the structural explanation and how it does match with with a neuroplastic one. Yeah, and then the second part was just asking about the techniques that people can use once they do understand that neuroscience and once they've applied it to their own symptoms, really sort of connected the dots there and taken it to heart. What are the approaches that you use with patients that you see being most effective for that deeper inner work around shifting our core beliefs, around
Mm-hmm.
our ways of being? This is all kind of the challenging, the inner work that we've all done as recoveries. I'd love to know how you support patients with that, what you find to be really effective there.
Yeah, for sure. So I like to put up fingers and count. So I would say five things. So we need to show our unconscious brain. We can't just tell it. And we do that through five different ways. One is words and thoughts. That's part of it, right? But it's only one out of five things. But we need to show our unconscious brain. So we do that through emotions. And the emotional center is intertwined with the unconscious brain, and our danger part of our brain is our emotional center. It's an unconscious part of our brain. So words and thoughts, emotions, visualization, because again, this is the sort of the language of our unconscious brain, sensory stimuli, and action. So we need to incorporate all of these different components in order to change the learned neural circuits that are in the unconscious brain. So one of the analogies I use is that if a 3-year-old believes that monsters exist in the closet, their fear is going to go up. So as a parent, you go in, you hug them, you soothe them, you say you're safe, and the fear will go down, right? Great. But if
Absolutely.
you don't, but if you don't teach them that monsters aren't really real, as soon as you leave, the fear is going to go right back up. What parent hasn't had to spend, 8 hours a night in bed with their child? And you don't really want to do that every single night. Who has the time? And so what you need to do is walk them to the closet door, open the closet door, show them that monsters don't really exist. And when you do that, that's what then dials down the fear and keeps it down so that you don't have to go and spend every night in bed with them. And so the analogy is that when our unconscious brain actually believes that there's fear, there's danger, that the danger is really real, then if we do meditation or breathing or nervous system calming tools, that's like the parent going in and soothing the 3-year-old. That will dial down the fear. It will calm our nervous system, but it's temporary. We haven't gotten to the root of what our brain is actually believing is danger. So instead, we need to walk towards the closet door and open it and show the brain that what it thinks it needs to fear is not actually dangerous. And what those things are, again, I would say are that there's what the monsters in the closet are is structural damage in the body, repressed emotions, a personality trait, or false negative core belief that we're not good enough just as we are. And the more that you really distill down any stress, sort of psychological stress, we can really often distill it down into these things. That's the reason that our brain is actually activating our nervous system or activating danger signals. It's not to say that the psychological stress shouldn't be a stress. But again, what we're showing our brain is that we don't need to be responding as if it's a physical threat of harm. And again, we can really distill it down into these things. So breaking the fear symptom loop, sort of like with pain reprocessing therapy, is breaking that structural the loop, or teaching our brain that the sort of quote unquote monster in the closet, that our body is damaged or there's structural damage in our body, isn't really true. So how do we do that? We do it by leaning into the fear. So we have to turn and face our fears in order to show our brain that we don't actually need to be afraid of what it thinks it does. So we have to move our body instead of not move our body. But if you're afraid of heights, do you start with bungee jumping? No, you start with just leaning into it a little bit. So, and a lot of what I've done when I've worked with people is around long COVID and chronic fatigue, and I've had very, very, very severe patients where they couldn't talk, they couldn't leave bed, they had their eyes covered, their ears covered, like literally had to eat their food out of a straw. Um, and so you start where the fear can handle. And so sometimes that's literally starting with visualization and visualizing, because what's happening, and this is the cool part of the neuroscience, is that our unconscious brain works through prediction. So our unconscious brain, through our neural circuits, creates our experience for us largely based on prediction. Well, what does it predict? What does it know? The past. But our unconscious brain doesn't know time, doesn't know what's happening outside of our body versus inside of our thoughts. That's our conscious logical brain. So we use that to our advantage. So by visualizing and then really rolling in emotions in a positive way and sensory stimuli to make the visualization really real, that what that's doing is creating new memories that then is rolling into our unconscious brain. Now our unconscious brain is using these new memories that we've made through our visualization, and it's using that to now roll in to our predictive expectations going forward for the future. So we visualize ourselves talking, or visualize, removing the eye mask or standing up or walking or whatever it is that triggers the symptoms. We start with visualize and bringing in positive emotions and sensory stimuli into our visualization, just like an athlete does. That is what can start changing the sensate or the brain, the unconscious brain's response. And then we get to the action part. So then maybe we stand up, even though there's symptoms, and then roll in the safe signals to our brain. And little by little, and it's just dipping your toe little by little in a way that you control, and in order to update the predictions and bring it in the direction that you want it to go. So that's kind of one part of it.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you so much. Not only there do we have the neuroscience in terms of how we understand these symptoms, but you've given us a framework that you use with your patients to help them reduce and resolve the symptoms. So thank you so much. I know there's lots and lots of questions popping out about various things in the chat there, and we will get to those in the Q&A. But I do want to just have a little bit of time to talk to you about your own symptoms, Becca, because I understand that you developed symptoms after becoming an expert in neuroplastic medicine. So with all of the knowledge of how the nervous system works, how these chronic symptoms work, you had your own experiences. I just find that fascinating. And could you talk to us a little about those, about what you experienced personally?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I came to this because of looking for other solutions for my patients. And this was during the pandemic in 2021, and I was working in the integrative clinic at Kaiser. And so I just dove right in, and because I was in the system, I was seeing, dozens, over time, hundreds of patients, because people could see me for free and it's high volume, and people didn't have any other answers, as you well know. And so, but I didn't know this very well, and so I was trying it out and trying to figure out how to do this and teach it, and still taking more training myself. But the thing is, it's very quickly, and it's not easy to wrap your brain around this. So I have to admit that as I was doing this, I would wake up every morning and I would think, oh my gosh, am I really saying this to patients? And like it was like almost this like panic inside me. And I would walk to work listening to recovery stories that would sort of bring me grounded. And then I would be a little afraid, and I would go into my clinic with a lot of people that had long COVID or chronic pain, different things. And I would say these things, and enough patients said to me, oh my gosh, this is the first thing that a doctor said to me that actually makes sense, that I knew that this was right, and I was starting to see people get better a little bit. So I couldn't unsee this. I knew that this was the right direction. I had to keep doing it, but yet there was people making fun of me, or my colleagues. I mean, not exactly to my face, but some of my patients got angry at me, really, really angry at me. Not a lot, fortunately, but enough. And then I was trying really hard to get the system to understand this. So I was making appointments with the specialists and all the people, and people I'd known for 20 years. It wasn't like I was some unknown person off the street, but so I couldn't get but part of it was I didn't know the right language. I didn't know how to say this eloquently. Exactly. But I was trying my hardest. And I felt very passionate about it, but I couldn't get the leaders to listen to what I was saying. There was a couple patients that sent me a very, very, very nasty email multiple times in the system for everyone to read. I knew that people were sort of colleagues were making fun of me. And so I was feeling trapped. And my personality traits is that I am all of the personality traits. I'm a high achiever. I'm hard on myself. I am a perfectionist. I need control. I am like the gold star people pleaser. I don't make waves. I don't like conflict. I mean, I would have been diagnosed as a highly sensitive child when I was a child. I was very quiet. I mean, all of it. But here I was feeling trapped. That here I was making waves, trying to tell this huge institution that they're doing things wrong, essentially, but not trying to say it like that. But over here, knowing that I'm helping patients, and this is the only, like, they've tried absolutely everything, and I'm sort of their last hope of getting help in the system over here. So I can't stop doing this work. And over here, I'm not getting um, support, understanding, even getting made fun of. But now people, and I was working in primary care just as what we call cross cover, just seeing same day appointments. I didn't have my own patients. And now I'm being flooded in primary care where I only had 20 minutes with a patient. And And just on and on. So my brain, and at the same time, I had a friend, a very, very good friend from college that I'd been friends with for 30 years. Some a big stressor happened in their life, and I was really trying to help them and really putting my people pleaser on, putting my own needs on the back burner, helping my friend. And then my unconscious brain really realized that this friend, after all these years, would never do that for me. And then and really realized that I really wasn't being treated respectfully, but yet to break the social connection, to stand up for myself, really dove deep into my own fears of my false negative core belief that I wasn't lovable and worthy just for who I was. And if I broke this social connection with this friend, I would be proving to the world that I wasn't actually worthy. And that the situation with in the medical system was sort of showing to the world, again, this false negative core belief that people aren't listening to me, they don't believe me, therefore I'm not worthy. So my unconscious, so if you look again at my sort of four systems, my unconscious brain, what fear of these, very real stressors, how was my unconscious brain perceiving what was happening to me in my life? What it was perceiving was, oh, well, I'm not really lovable and worthy, so that is dangerous. And people aren't listening to me, and people are getting mad at me when I'm trying to help them and actually do have a good solution for them. So what emotions are there? Anger, rage, hurt that I wasn't expressing, and doesn't feel safe to express the full extent of that if my brain doesn't feel like it's safe to do that. And the personality traits that I'm caught in between being a do-goodist, not making waves, but yet I need to make waves because I also need to help people. So my brain was feeling trapped in all of these different ways. And so I had had my ACL replaced twice, 20 years prior because of injuries, falling on my bike. It had healed completely. I skied, I ran, I did everything I wanted, but every now and then I'd have a little pain in my knee over the years. And I always attributed it to, oh, well, that's my bad knee from the surgery. Like, oh, of course, that's what happens, but I didn't really think too much about it. And so then I started getting pain in my knee. And I got pain in my knee. Actually, I read Howard Schubner's book, and I thought, like, literally, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is neuroplastic pain. So within a day of reading the book, the pain went away. A book cure in that way. I could make that pain go away. But then after that is when I was really diving into all of this work. So then a few months later, my knees started hurting again. And then it just started really building and growing. And now it wasn't going away. And then it moved up to my hip and then my knee, my ankle. So 100%, I knew day one that this pain was neuroplastic. I mean, I had no doubt at all. But I was still in the process of like even learning what these tools are, how to get better. And so I was reading Dr. Schubner's book and I was, kind of trying these things out. But I didn't, of course, being the ultimate doctor that doesn't go and get help from someone. I just did all of this work myself. And so I kind of dabbled in it. I would kind of do some somatic tracking, maybe a little emotional expressive writing, not that much, but really basically just took it. And it got really, really, really bad. My knee actually swelled up. It was really big because I was walking on it and walking on it, walking on it because this friend I was talking about came to visit, and I felt like I couldn't just take care of myself. So I was walking all around and all around, and my knee got really swollen. My leg got really swollen, actually. And then I had pain all over my body. It was worse at night and in the mornings. I mean, I would literally groan out loud. I could barely sit up without having just searing, burning pain down my whole body. And I could still work, but I really couldn't do anything else. I have two kids. Thank goodness my husband kind of took care of everything. I couldn't walk from the car to my clinic practically. I had to walk really slowly, even getting up from my exam stool to walk to my office like 20 feet away. I had to muster everything I could to walk in a way that was trying to show my patients that I didn't have all this pain. And at the end of the day, I had so much fatigue, like I basically just had to go to bed at like 7 p.m. It felt like my body had just been injected with lead. And I mean, it was really, really severe. And again, I was just sort of dabbling in having the symptoms go down. Like I would meditate, I would breathe, I would sort of do these like exercises to bring it down. It helped, it helped kind of just enough, but it didn't get to the root. And so what I found was that really for me, it was really learning the emotional awareness and expression therapy of feeling and expressing my emotions wholly and completely, and not only learning to do that on a regular basis to not have my emotions be repressed, but express them. But the other thing was really processing my childhood through the EAT and really in my imagination, in the visualization, using emotions to rewrite the past from a perspective of empowerment and that I didn't deserve that. And I do deserve unconditional self love. And now, and doing this work, and actually then breaking off my relationship with the friend that wasn't treating me well. Inside my body, it was really hard. I was like, I would sort of have this, oh, like my unconscious brain would sort of go to this panic. But in taking that action, felt really uncomfortable, but doing it anyway then showed my brain, yeah, I actually don't deserve to be treated like that. So then learning healthy communication. I never had healthy communication before. So learning how to stand up for myself and how to have open and honest communication of where I feel and express my emotions over here. Because what always happened to me in my life is my brain feared standing up for myself. It feared the emotion of anger. So my brain would go to tears. So the moment that anything was happening where I needed to stand up for myself, my brain would just bring tears. And then I couldn't even stand up for myself if I wanted to because I was crying. And once I learned that the tears was a protective mechanism stopping my brain from actually expressing the appropriate emotion of anger, and that I learned how to express the emotions by myself wholly and completely, and then step into healthy communication of having open and honest communication and learning that I could be kind and firm and stand up for myself and ask for my needs to be met, put in my boundaries, that I didn't have to be a mean person. I didn't have to be angry at the other person in order to do this. And that whatever their response was, no matter how uncomfortable that was for me, I could still feel good about myself that I was communicating in a way that was according to my values and standing up for myself and trying this out little by little. And I mean, I literally tried it out. I've said this example before. Some of you might have heard this before, but like I literally would not, even if I was parched, I would not ask, not only would I not ask for a glass of water because I didn't want to put someone out, even if someone offered me a glass of water, I actually would say no, even if I wanted it, because it was so uncomfortable in my body to ask anything of someone else or to put them out. And so in little ways, like even even just taking time for myself by myself in my office and going and getting myself a glass of water in my day was like literally where I started of standing up for myself. And then when people would offer me a glass of water, it would feel uncomfortable, but I would say yes. And then I started asking for a glass of water even when they hadn't offered me one. And so again, I mean, and that might seem like ridiculously small to some people, but like we're all on such a different range of what feels safe to our own brain. And so it's really working with people of figuring out for you what where that range is and learning how to empower yourself over time. But again, I think all of those pieces of feeling our emotions, standing up for ourselves. And then the other big piece is teaching people to come into our body, really lean into the discomfort in the body and recognize, why is that discomfort there? It's because our brain is trying to protect us. Why is it trying to protect us? Because it wants us to be okay. Why does it want us to be okay? Because our brain loves us. That is our unconditional love. We all have that. That is in all of us already. It's just often manifested in this way that's actually making us suffer. So instead, if instead of trying to fight those symptoms, get rid of them, fear them, if we can change our relationship to those symptoms and understand that those symptoms is our self-love, it's changing that false negative core belief. And so as we lean into the sensations and now meet it with understanding, listen to the sensations. I call it the 4 L's. We lean in, we listen to the message, we try to learn what the message is saying, and then we meet it with love. When we can change our relationship to the sensations in our body and know that we are unconditionally lovable and worthy just as we are, in all of our flaws and mistakes and failures, or however you want to look at it, then the unconscious brain's survival brain can finally release. And the last thing for me, like, I felt like I was kind of doing all this work, and it took me quite a long time to get better, I will say, because again, I was mainly just doing this myself, without too much guidance. And I was doing the EAT, the emotional processing, and then I was getting pretty far along, but I still had symptoms. And my symptoms had then moved up to my upper body. My legs had gotten better, and but they're hanging on. And really, the last thing to go that I realized was just this internal dialogue of being hard on myself all the time, just under the surface, and really being able to get that up and out and recognize that for what it is, and really let go of my own self-judgment. Um, was really key in helping a lot of the symptoms finally resolve.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think so much of what you were saying will be resonating with people. I know it deeply resonated with me. And I feel like, the journey of recovery is such a journey of personal transformation and really like understanding those
Yeah.
core beliefs, understanding your ways of being in the world that develop for such a good reason, but are not always helping you and might be triggering the nervous system and gently shifting those. I mean, it is such a journey, and one that we as recoveries have been through as well. And I'm so grateful for you to share that so openly with us all, because I just think there's so much learning in there for people who are on this journey, who get the neuroscience, because clearly you totally understood the neuroscience on a deep level, but there was personal inner work that you had to do, to reduce, to resolve those symptoms. And it's just so powerful to hear that. So I'm really grateful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah, you're welcome.